Jim Barry, and I'm going to get his title right, is the Western Massachusetts Regional Coordinator in the Green Communities Division of the Department of Energy Resources. Say that fast. We've asked him to help today to give us a context from the Commonwealth perspective about where the Commonwealth sees itself going in the next decade. Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim Barry. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. That always gets a laugh. I don't understand. What, you don't believe me? Full disclosure, I've only been working for the government 2 years. So if you have any questions about what were those bozos in Boston thinking, there's a high probability I can't answer it because I wasn't a bozo in Boston except for recently. So many of the old things and old ideas and old have gone by the wayside. I bring you greetings from Governor Patrick. I was with him yesterday in Belchertown where he was touring the town I live in, Belchertown, where over 70% of the people still are without, my goodness, electricity. Which, it's an interesting situation to live through. In one respect, it's great for all of us to learn how dependent we are on it. In my town, probably 80% of us have private wells, not public water or septic. And so without electricity, you don't have a well pump. Without a well pump, you don't have water. Without water, you don't flush toilets. And that gets people nervous within a day or 2 or 5. But the governor was with us because of the concern over the speed with which the power was coming back. I guess I'm treading on carefully. Were we being filmed today? Are we? Are we? Yeah, because sometimes we are and sometimes we aren't. And you're going to get the slow version of Jim, I think, today. The governor is no stranger to Greenfield. He's been here on numerous occasions. When I saw him yesterday and told him I was coming here in his place, he said, "Oh, you drew the short straw?" I said, No. I like going to Greenfield. I tell people that when I first became a Green Communities guy 2 years ago, previously I was a self-employed computer guy, wandering around explaining complex things to people. And I had heard about the Green Communities Act because I was a selectman in Belchertown and heard that there was some money out there if you jump through some hoops. So I said, well, what are the hoops? How do I jump through them? Where can I go? How do I get it? Need some money. And I learned enough about it to begin to explain it to others. And then when they offered a job opportunity, a friend of mine who works for the state said, you should go do that because you're about as nuts as anybody. And that's a good thing for you to be doing, is talking about, let's save energy, let's save energy, let's save energy, let's save energy. And oh, by the way, we might be able to get some federal or state money to help us save energy. So one of the first things I did when I got the job is I sent an email and a snail mail and phones to every mayor and town administrator and selectman within Hamden, Hampshire, Berkshire, and Franklin County. Those are my districts. The very next day, I got a phone call from some guy who says, hi, I'm Billy Martin, and I'm saying, this is a joke from my brother who's, the baseball fanatic about nobody remembers Billy Martin, the baseball manager who got fired about 12 times within a week? Guy says, hi, I'm Billy Martin. I says, okay, how can I help you? He says, well, you got this green thing going on? I says, yes, sir. He says, I'm from the mayor of Greenfield. The name of us is Greenfield. We want to be a green community. How soon can you get here? I said, how about tomorrow morning? So I went up the very next day, met with him and his team, Eric, my friend Sandy. Is Sandy here today? Explained to him very briefly what the 5 hoops were, and the mayor says, we can do that, right, Eric? And Eric says, yes, sir, Mayor, you betcha. And Sandy says, yeah, probably. I said, well, here we go. And off we were running. And I'm proud to say that of the 35 communities that became green in the first pass, the first designation application received in Boston was from Greenfield, and I think you deserve a round of applause for that. I was up here so often on TV talking about the stretch code that when I currently stop here on my way to Rowe or Charlemont or et cetera, I usually stop here for dinner on the way up. And if I'm in the Friendly's getting a hamburger, somebody says, aren't you the guy that was on? I said, no, don't watch public TV. If I'm still on, by all means, turn the Red Sox back on. I was asked to give you a broad perspective of what the state's trying to do. Often we work in, I don't want to say silos, but we get focused on the things we're trying to do, and it's not always obvious that there's other in the same situation also working. So I'm going to give you a big picture of what we are calling the Massachusetts Clean Energy and Climate Plan In 2008, 4 or 5 major pieces of legislation were passed by your state reps and your state senators and our governor that was landmark legislation in Massachusetts for doing clean energy, energy conservation, energy renewal, global warming concerns, jobs acts. There was a package of 5 of them that were all passed in July of 2008. One of them was the Global Warming Solutions Act, and it requires the executive office, don't be writing all this down. You don't need to remember all this. There will not be a quiz at the end, okay, so don't have to write it down. The Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs was required to establish greenhouse gas emissions of between 10 and 25% of the 1990 levels by 2020. What? Okay, go look at the 1990 levels and figure out how to reduce it by 10% or 20% or 25% by 2020. And in December, Secretary Ian Bowles said, we're going to go for this 25%, which is a good thing. And Massachusetts is at the end of the energy pipeline, as you probably know. Our gas, our electric, 90% of what we bring, all the energy we use, comes from outside the region, which means our money goes outside the region, some of which goes so far outside the region, it goes to people on the other side of the ocean who aren't happy with us and who are willing to spend money to kill us. So the goal to reduce fossil fuels, the goal to reduce energy consumption is a huge importance for the country, but Massachusetts in particular. Some of the highlights of the global plan that had to be created and that was created that's going to get us to a reduction in greenhouse gas. And one of the other major concerns is Massachusetts has the highest electricity rates. That red bubble is us. We're like the 3rd or 4th. That includes, well, I don't know, Hawaii, Connecticut, Rhode Island, then us. All of U.S. is in the green bubble. So we have high prices. We have high prices and volatility, so that's the price of gas and oil and gasoline. Not only is it going up, but you never know where it's going. This is not a good thing. There's some economic opportunities and job growth possibilities if we all work harder and smarter at energy efficiency and renewable energy. And this is a list of a bunch of opportunities that we think are going to contribute to anywhere between 40,000 and 48,000 new jobs based on the initiatives I'm going to briefly go through here. Energy efficiency, energy efficiency, energy efficiency, energy efficiency, energy efficiency. The negawatt is far more important than the megawatt. What we do when we turn off the lights, when we let the sun shine in instead of the lights, these are great things to do. Massachusetts has the most ambitious energy efficiency program in the country. We have spent 3 times as much as California per capita. We have doubled the employment in the energy efficiency services market since 2007. As you may know, if you haven't done so, go to masssave.com, M-A-S-S-S-A-V-E, sign up for a free energy audit, have them show up at your house and give you free light bulbs, have them show up at your house and tell you what else you might do to save energy. You've already paid for it on your electric bill. You might as well call them and get the benefit of it. The electric utilities and the gas utilities in Massachusetts are going to spend $2 billion of our money, $2 billion in the next 3 years on these kinds of initiatives that will result in $6 billion in savings. So you spend some money to put in better light bulbs and you save energy. By 2020, 20% of the electricity will be through energy efficiency. So we're going to be reducing the amount of energy we need, reducing the amount of electricity we need, so we don't have to build a new plant. That was part of the law that was passed that said, I guess it's 2 slides in. This is a brand new slide. I got this yesterday. Special delivery email. Hurry up, get this in your packet. It's really important. We finally beat California. Massachusetts is #1. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Absolutely. We've been #2 for 2 or 3 years, and we were #5 for a while, but we finally beat California. And as soon as the results were announced, I heard, I don't know if it's true, you know how rumors start, but I'm happy to spread this rumor. I heard that California was challenging the application process. You know, did we really fill out all, they get the paperwork right? Are they really #1? But we're pretty proud of this. I mean, it's a small state, and we are committed to it. I can tell you, one of the other interesting things I mentioned, I work with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Deval Patrick was the first governor in this country to mingle the Environmental Secretariat with the Energy Secretariat, because what's good for the environment is good for energy, what's good for saving energy is good for the environment. So We have multiple people and multiple agencies working very hard at the state level to help municipalities and individuals get through this. So solar power has increased 20-fold since 2010. There's been a 4-fold increase in the number of firms involved in energy installations, lots of new small PV companies being created, doubling of employment in solar manufacturing and installation between 2007 and 2009. This is good stuff. This is real jobs that are local, that can't be done overseas via the internet. These are people in your community installing solar panels. Wind has also increased 10-fold. The goal is to have 30 megawatts by the end of 2010. We're pretty close to that. There's lots of facilities going up. I know it's controversial. I know there's concerns about local control. I'm happy to take questions on those issues if you wish. But a lot of what we do in Boston is not nuts and bolts and people on the ground. It's creating policies that then set the stage for people to follow. And sometimes it's frustrating to just write a paper or in hope that something gets done. But the cool thing about my job is I get to drive around and actually see solar panels installed after I've given them a check. So that's pretty cool. But some of the policies that we're doing to try to get to that reduction in greenhouse gas initiatives, the top line there says building business as usual. If we do almost nothing, then our greenhouse gas emissions is going to stay on about that kind of a line, and it's probably going up. If we do the things that we think we're doing with regards to buildings, we can bring it down 9.8%. If we do some of the things we're talking about for electricity, we'll come down another 7%. If we do some of the things in transportation, it's 7%. So there's a myriad of policies from different secretariats, from different agencies, from different people working together to do this, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So in terms of buildings, the Green Communities Act of 2008 requires all the IOUs, investor-owned utilities, not municipal light plants, investor-owned utilities, to capture all cost-effective energy efficiency opportunities. That is, don't build another power plant unless you've already reduced the amount of power that people are using. Make some sense? The Green Communities Act also requires that we adopt the International Energy Conservation Commission's building code every 3 years. So that is the building codes that we all have to follow, plumbing building code, electrical building code, also has an energy component to the building code. We've adopted the International Energy Code that changes every 3 years, that you can call the slope this way or this way, depending on your point of view. This way says it's getting harder to do. This says we're burning less electricity. But the International Council is continually adjusting the building codes to let us use less electricity. And they adopted a version of the energy code called a stretch energy code, which towns can choose to adopt or not. It's purely optional, which is even more energy efficient. So between the IOUs spending money on reducing energy costs within buildings, new buildings, retrofit buildings, additions, we're changing the building code so that new buildings are more energy efficient. We're starting a building labeling thing where nobody buys a car today without knowing the miles per gallon, right? Does anybody not care about miles per gallon? It might not be the only factor you consider, but it's certainly one. But yet we go out and we buy houses and we have no idea how much energy they are. So we're doing a pilot program in the Springfield area, 6 communities, where we're going to go out and do energy assessments and give them a score, a thermometer kind of score, like an MPG rating on the house. And then offer them ideas on how they can reduce their energy, and then do that again and see if the scores come down. We're trying to get people to be aware of an MPG rating for buildings so that people will start asking for it, so the realtors will stop giving us a hard time about, you shouldn't be doing that, man. You really shouldn't be doing that. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. Sorry. Jim Barry got here again. So there's lots of things we're trying to do for buildings. There's some things we're doing to save electricity. The Renewable Portfolio Standard, as you probably know, requires all energy providers to have a certain amount of their energy portfolio where they get their electricity. They get some from gas, they get some from oil, they get some from nuclear, they get some. We require them to get a certain percentage of their total portfolio from renewable energy. And that number keeps going up. So that's a way to bring down greenhouse gas emissions in the electric sector, because we're requiring them to become cleaner in producing electricity. There are more stringent EPA power plant rules that are coming into effect. So this is federal policy that we will take advantage of. And we hope to get some clean energy imports from Hydro-Quebec. That will also be a big chunk of the 25% we're trying to get to. In the transportation industry, as you know, cars and trucks are one of the biggest components of greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to adopt the federal and California vehicle efficiency and greenhouse gas emission standards. When we do that, then our new vehicles will be more efficient and less greenhouse gases. The federal emissions and fuel efficient standards will also reduce the amount of greenhouse gases. There's something interesting called halfway down pay-as-you-drive auto insurance. I drive quite a few miles a week in my job from town to town to town. My wife just goes up and checks the mail occasionally, 2 or 3 times a week. Our insurance rates for the exact same car are the exact same. So the idea is maybe if we had insurance rates that were based on the miles you drive, that would be an incentive to drive less, to carpool more, to reduce miles. So this is something we're going to try. Green Dot, D-O-T, the new Department of Transportation, they have their own policy of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing emissions, anti-idling. We're going to see less and less. You're probably never going to see no trucks sitting there with the cars running, the engines running, but there's more and more of that being happening. In terms of non-energy emissions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, what are the things we can do to reduce greenhouse gas that's not necessarily energy related? Well, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from motor vehicle air conditioning. Many of us run our air conditioners in the summer, surely not all the time, but some of us do it on occasion. With better air conditioning systems, both in cars and in refrigerants, we figure we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from that sector. Those are sort of siloed methods of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. These are some cross-cutting policies. So MEPA is the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Advisory. It's not an agency. So if there's any large-scale development going on, it has to go through their process. And they are changing their rules and regulations to not only look at protected species, environmental issues, but to also look at what in this new development are you doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's going to be part of the questions and answers to help reduce that. There's a leading by example. There's a group in Boston who's do nothing but work with community colleges, state colleges, office buildings, state office buildings, to reduce their footprint and then learn by it. So there are many community colleges that are getting the benefit of free solar panels, and we're using that not only to help reduce the state's price and the state's use of electricity, but to set an example. You know, if everybody preaches about we should have solar panels, we should have solar panels, but nobody's doing it, you know? Leading by example is very important. That's a pie shape of where we think we're going to save greenhouse gas emissions. So the buildings are that one on the right, the one on the bottom is electricity, transportation is on the left. So how are we putting this plan into action? We're launching the Clean Energy and Climate Advisory Committee, a new group, yes, a new study group, yes, a new bureaucracy, probably. But their job is to analyze all of these potential benefits on a yearly basis and see, where are we going? Because as you well know, you can have a plan, you can set some goals, and then you can put it on the shelf. Or you can have a plan and set some goals and agree to specific measurements and then look at it on a regular basis to see, are we in fact doing it? So this is one of those cases where the government is getting it right. And I think that's probably enough. All right, let me close with this then, because you're here for the day to work. And I know that I mentioned I was a selectman for 6 years. Prior to that, I was on the board of the planning board for 7 years in Belchertown. I know what it's like to be a small group with an idea and trying to get it done. And what I've tried to do today is give you the context of each individual small group has got an idea you're trying to work with. The town, as a bigger group, is trying to get things done. The state has their plan. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of all that, and we only focus on these 6 or 7 people we always see at the coffee shop and have the same conversations with. But I want to remind you what Margaret Mead said. Never for a moment doubt what a small group of highly dedicated people can change the world, because that's the only way it gets changed. Thank you.